Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P. Joe Pizzapia. With me is Andrew Erickson, BPE, and his first day as a full-time fantasy guy. What a beautiful day. What a beautiful way to start the day. Kyle Richardson from the Fantasy Headliners joining us as well. And we're here to talk about the trade targets. Week 1 is in the books. It's week 2. We're talking about some rankings, risers and fallers, but already the trade winds are blowing, and they're blowing hard. But first, we got to talk to Kyle Richardson. This is a glorious day. I'm glad we got to spend this day with you here as you have completed your journey in through the matrix into the full-time fantasy world, man. That's a beautiful thing.
It is, man. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. It's a weird feeling today. It's definitely one of excitement and a little bit of just nervousness in the background. But I mean, I've known both of you guys for a very long time. Yeah. I mean, we kind of all, we're doing some things together. It feels like 7-8 years ago, and now it feels like it's come full circle for a lot of us. So it's really cool to be spending this day with you guys, and I appreciate it.
Congratulations, man. It's very cool. And it just goes to show you, you mentioned 7-8 years. I was at 10 plus. I mean, people, don't realize how many years of the grind there is. And of course, the grinder of all grinders, Andrew Erickson, we got 1 week in the books. How you feeling, buddy? How you holding up after this first week?
Oh, man, it was just so fun and exciting to dive into everything after week 1 played out. Looking back and seeing like where you were wrong, where you were right on things, and just really trying to take it all in to get ready for week 2. So I'm excited.
All right, let's try to take it in, try to give everybody some good advice, making some trades, and we're going to be using the Sleeper app for the most traded players as well. So if you haven't already, make sure you're playing over on Sleeper because it is the best place. All my leagues are there. Seriously, any league that I can get to Sleeper or to move to Sleeper, I have moved. So go check them out. Also, if you need some extra help after the pod to try to work out some trades, look at some values, then might I suggest maybe perhaps some Fantasy Pros tools for you. FantasyPros.com/myplaybook has the trade analyzer, and our trade analyzer and trade finder tools are the best resources out there for the active fantasy managers who will stop at nothing to improve their rosters till they are absolutely the greatest they possibly can be. The trade finder shows you deals that might improve your team and how likely they are to get accepted. And the trade analyzer is out there as well to look at some of the trades maybe you think might work out. But you can only find these tools over at FantasyPros.com/myplaybook. So keep in mind, you have to go premium to use the trade analyzer and trade finder. So remember, when I told you about FantasyPros.com/offers, well, go ahead and hit that up. FantasyPros.com/offers. Make a small deposit in one of our partner sites. And just like that, you get 6 free months of the premium product. That gives you access to all the trade tools, all the extended My Playbook tools, all the access to us over on Discord. So many cool things. Andrew Erickson comes to your house, makes balloon animals. It's amazing. Let's start here and talk about some of the most traded players. And let's start with one who is a running back that was not one that I think was one of our favorite trade targets or draft targets even, but David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears has been traded a lot already. And Andrew Erickson, we'll start with you. I know he wasn't a huge target of ours. We saw a lot of issues. I know we can't take too much out of what we saw on Sunday with all that weather, but right now with David Montgomery, are you somebody that's buying, selling, or holding? Because the value has certainly gone down even further than maybe where we had it a few weeks ago.
I mean, for me, I'm selling David Montgomery. Was never in the camp to draft David Montgomery in the first place, so it's hard for me to come in and say, nope, you got to scoop him up now, you got to pick him up, because I was never in on David Montgomery because I liked Khalil Herbert a lot. And what do we see again in week 1? Khalil Herbert on fewer touches outproduces David Montgomery on the ground. Like, how many times do we have to see this? Now, I know that the weather played a major factor in that game, but Khalil Herbert was playing in the same way that David Montgomery was, and he was more productive on the ground despite 8 fewer carries. You saw Khalil Herbert get goal line carries. He had 2 goal line carries. There's just a lot of red flags, and what you're hoping for is this David Montgomery high-end target share that he saw, 24% in week 1, because Justin Fields couldn't throw the ball down the field. So unless you're going to buy into the fact that Montgomery's going to continue to see targets at that high of a rate with a mobile quarterback, which I do not think, I just think it's the time to sell David Montgomery as the starting running back, because the more we see of Khalil Herbert, the more I'm impressed, and the more the coaches are going to be impressed. You can't go back and look at the film, the Bears coaches, and see, oh, well, we got to get David Montgomery the ball more, because that didn't work. Giving Khalil Herbert the ball at the end of the game when they were trying to squeak out a win, that worked for them. So it's not going to surprise me at all to see Herbert continuing to push David Montgomery for touches. And let's be honest, unless Montgomery's getting volume, he's not going to be that productive for fantasy. So Montgomery, I am definitely trying to move off if people still believe that he is the locked and loaded Bears starter long term.
All right, so you might be selling low. Is that the right thing to do here, Kyle, with David Montgomery? Do you want to buy him cheap because he is still in this, especially if you have Khalil Herbert, or do you want to sell him off, or maybe just want to hold and wait and see a little bit longer?
For me, the people buying David Montgomery right now are those thrift shoppers, those individuals that love going to your garage sales or your secondhand stores, and they find those like broken pieces, and they're like, "Hey, I'm going to put this together. I'm going to make gold out of it." Things like that. I was never on David Montgomery either to begin the season, which hurts because I love David Montgomery. I think he is a good NFL running back. But I'm not a fan of the team around him. I don't know if the offensive line took a big enough step forward this year. How was Justin Fields going to take another step forward? What carries was he going to have? Khalil Herbert, you already mentioned, what kind of a role? So there were so many things up in the air with that offense that for me with David Montgomery, it was like, I've got to step back. So, I mean, if I own him, like if I was somebody that did end up taking the risk right now, I'm probably just going to ride it out unless you do get somebody that comes knocking on your door and says, hey, I'm willing to give you a few extra shekels here to try and get them from you, then maybe at that point I roll with it. But for me, you kind of gotta ride it out, because unless you've got that David Montgomery fan in your league, you're probably not going to be able to get too much for him.
I love a good shekel. I know Andrew does too. It's fascinating also because this might be that one window where even if somebody wasn't 100% sure of David Montgomery, they can't necessarily take too much out of that game because of the weird weather variable. This might be the window, everybody, with David Montgomery if you want to get out. Just putting that out there. So let's talk about some guys maybe you can get out from David Montgomery from. Let's see if I can tempt these two gentlemen with some trade offers. David Montgomery or Rhamondre Stevenson? Who would you rather have rest of season, Andrew Erickson?
I'd rather have Rhamondre Stevenson because the Patriots severely lack playmaker. Like, Stevenson is the best playmaker on that team. And, if you watch that
Don't
game,
depress me this early in the morning. Stop these things.
They have no one on offense to generate big plays except Kendrick Bourne, who played 2 snaps for the Patriots, catches the 40-yard pass, and then immediately comes out of the game. Stevenson's got the juice. And that Patriots offense is just, we don't know what they're doing, but I know Stevenson is good, and he creates plays. So I'd rather have him long term.
Kyle, how about you? Stevenson or Montgomery?
I'm fully on board with Rhamondre Stevenson, and his performance week 1 is really basically a great summarization of what week 1 was for 95% of the league, it feels like. And it feels like people are already panicking on him, because I know, like, in our comment section, people are like, do I drop Stevenson? Do I try to trade? I'm like, no, it's just week 1. Like, just hold out for right now. I mean, Harris only got 1 more carry than he did, and yes, he was a little bit more productive, but I still think Stevenson's going to end up having a decent role in the pass catching game. Andrew, like you said, he's a playmaker, and he's going to be a playmaker on this team. So get him the football. Bill Belichick is smart enough to do that. I think we're going to get him going very soon. I'm taking Stevenson here.
I bet this is a trade you could pull off too, because I think there's still a lot of people that see Montgomery as a starter, quote unquote. So listen carefully, everybody. This is the kind of deal you can, if you're looking further down the road, this would be a very smart move. How about another guy too, James Robinson? Kyle, would you be able to actually say what side of this deal would you want to be on, James Robinson or David Montgomery?
This one's tough because I don't want to give away too much, but we might talk about James Robinson here very soon.
Spoilers.
This is a tough one for me because I'm also a big James Robinson fan. And so, obviously the Achilles last year absolutely, puts us in a situation now where, yes, he looked good for the most part this past week, but I don't know if I trust that long-term on the season. So I probably say, you know what, if I had to risk it with one or the other, I risk it with David Montgomery, just because he's not the one coming off the major injury.
Fair enough. Are you risking that as well, Andrew, or do you want Montgomery or Robinson rest of the season?
I think I'm going to roll with James Robinson just because, he surprised a lot of people, including myself. I had basically written James Robinson off as someone that wasn't going to be a major factor this year. And there you go. It's like we're just ripping off these big runs and looking efficient in the rushing game coming off the torn Achilles. So James Robinson's stock is way up. And I think right now, unless ETN really steps up, I mean, it's James Robinson's job to lose. And look, the last 2 years, what has he been? An RB1. Like, he's done and proven it at the NFL level. So until someone takes it away from him, it's going to be James Robinson's role in the Jaguars offense.
Because I've got so much Khalil Herbert, I think I want James Robinson. But you know what? I think we got to stop doubting the heart of the undrafted free agents. I mean, these guys they just show you, man. They're just built differently. Some of those dudes. I think I'd rather have Robinson too. It is close though, as Kyle was saying. Let's get to another RB too. No surprise here over on Sleeper. Another guy that's been very dealt the last few hours. Cam Akers. So let's break this down. It was one game. Darrell Henderson certainly did have a lot more opportunity in this one game. When I reiterate, it's one game. So, Kyle, let's start with you with this one. Are you buying, selling, or holding Cam Akers right now?
I mean, if you were one of the people that drafted him in basically like the 4th or 5th round where you had to take him, you really kind of have to stick it out at this point. I mean, I was off Cam Akers completely. And I just, even though he came back last year, he did not look explosive. He did not look like a guy that we had seen be a playmaker before. And I said, you know what? I can't trust it. For his ADP, I just don't want to roll with it. I don't want to go with it. So if you were one of the people that took him, I think you've got to kind of just roll with it and roll with your boy right now and see what happens on it. Because I think there's enough negative energy around Cam Akers right now that even if you did try to sell him to someone, they're going to be like, no, thank you.
All right. Well, just out of curiosity, would you be buying him on the cheap too then if you didn't have him already rostered?
No. I wouldn't be buying him either.
Even if he was very cheap, how many shekels would it take, Richardson?
How many shekels?
I want to know the shekels.
If I'm adding him, you're going to have to basically be giving me shekels on the dollar.
Shekels on the dollar.
Yeah, I don't want to be paying a whole lot for Cam Akers. If I've got like 3 stud running backs and the Cam Akers owner's like absolutely panicking and I can sell them, for somebody that I had on my bench that I'm not really going to be relying on anyway, then maybe I take a shot at it and see what happens. But I'm not going out and trading for him to be like a starter that I'm relying on at any point.
Shekels on the dollar. I think that's a club by the airport. All right, Andrew Erickson, let's talk about Cam Akers with you. Buy, sell, or trade. What are you doing?
Yeah, so I like this perspective here because I definitely was in on Cam Akers where his ADP was, and I do have him in some leagues. So it's a good question. I can relate to people that have Cam Akers as a manager. And the way I look at the situation is I still think Cam Akers is an interesting buy low candidate. And I almost kind of think of Darrell Henderson as almost a sell high candidate because the way that things shook out here, Sean McVay lied. Like he told us that he had 2 starting he told us he had 2 starting running backs, and everyone was like, okay, that's why you draft Darrell Henderson because he's going to see 50% of the snaps. That was not the case. Sean McVay continued to do having 1 running back in his offense. Like that was the process behind drafting Cam Akers. I just picked the wrong Rams running back, and I guess I'm not totally sold on Darrell Henderson being the locked and loaded RB1 all year long because both of these guys were dealing with soft tissue injuries during the offseason. Right. How do we know that it's not just Henderson was more healthy than Cam Akers was in this particular game? Like, we've only seen 1 running back really operate as the bell cow in the Rams offense. And in this particular matchup Thursday night, it was Darrell Henderson. But Sean McVay also talked about both of them being able to take on that role in this offense. So if Cam Akers is becoming more healthy, I mean, Darrell Henderson's snaps can only go down. Like, they cannot go higher than they were in week 1. And everyone has written off Cam Akers completely, despite the fact that McVay talked about both of them being RB1s in this offense. So for me, I would be, hesitant to buy into Darrell Henderson being the main guy because we've seen this before with him. And what happens to Darrell Henderson? Sure. He gets hurt. So I think Henderson is the guy that I want to cash out on now. If I have a Henderson, I want to get Cam Akers on my roster because it would not surprise me at all if we see Cam Akers end up being the RB1 in this backfield, whether it's because of a Darrell Henderson injury or Sean McVay is just like, hey, we're rolling with Akers this week because he's our other RB1 because Henderson's a little bit banged up. So that's the way I view it. And obviously, as someone that drafted Cam Akers, I am slightly biased, but I am trying to make the case and talk about the range of outcomes with Cam Akers and that it is just 1 week. Now, if Henderson is the RB1 in week 2, okay. Like, I will then probably have to lower Akers even more in like the rest of the season rankings, but it is only 1 week. And it was so bizarre. Like, everyone was shocked that
it was also a loss to Erickson, which I think, when a team loses, you got to go back to the drawing board and say, what didn't we do? Oh, we didn't get Akers the ball. We didn't get Allen Robinson the ball. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe we got to go figure that out. And I feel like good football coaches, which Sean McVay will. And I feel like that's something in this space of the Akers conversation that nobody's talking about. Do you feel the same way?
I think so. I just think I just don't see a scenario where it's just like, okay, now it's all Henderson and not Akers at all. Like after 1 week,
Right.
when
I don't
we
either.
had,
Especially
we
when
had
you lose.
exactly, when we had a pretty big sample size of McVay always favoring Akers over Darrell Henderson. When they were both healthy, it was Akers that was getting the ball. So, I just don't want to be too attached to what we saw happen in one primetime game for 1 week when the other sample size is pretty big of Akers getting the work. So I still think right now as Akers, I think it's just worth it to try to get him low and see how things shake out. And at worst, okay, now you have a high-end handcuff. Because if Henderson does get hurt, Akers will take over that RB1 role and see an 80% plus snap share, which is super valuable in fantasy.
All right, let me see if I could tempt the gentleman making a trade with me. Cam Akers or Isiah Pacheco? Who'd you rather have rest of season, Andrew?
I'm going with Cam Akers here. I mean, Pacheco got some work, but it was mostly in garbage time for the Chiefs, so I'm not too concerned. It's still CH's backfield, at least on early downs.
All right, Richardson, how about you? Same thing?
I mean, I do like Pacheco, but yeah, even here, I'll take Cam Akers just because there is for me, a better upside for Akers the rest of the season than what there would be for him.
All right. And I think it's interesting because, we saw one guy who had stats and the other guy who didn't. I think that's a trade you might be able to pull off if somebody's really just terrified of Akers right now. This is why we're throwing these names out there specifically. This is not just, willy-nilly stuff here. We're drilling down. Dameon Pierce, Kyle Richardson, or Cam Akers. Who would you have rest of the season? Another guy who didn't have a lot of stats and certainly lost some time to Rex Burkhead. We could all agree.
Yeah, this one definitely is a little bit closer for me. I was not on the I was on the Dameon Pierce in like the 10th round bandwagon. I was not on the Dameon Pierce in like the 5th round.
You didn't like him as the 5th player overall, really?
Oh man, so
why do we do this? Why do we we ruined Clyde Edwards-Helaire a couple years ago? I hate this. I hate it so much, and it happens every year. I blame Andrew. Anyway, what do you say, Kyle?
So, I mean, for me, this one is really tough. Part of me kind of wants to say Cam Akers because I think that is a team that is in a better position to be leading and winning games, allowing Akers to be a guy to get a few more touches. Whereas, Houston played very, very well this past weekend against an Indianapolis team that I felt that underperformed somewhat. So I don't think they're going to find themselves in a position where they're going to be able to say, hey, Pierce, here's 20 carries a game. Let's go out there and just pound the football. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. Where with Cam Akers, like Andrew said, we are going to get closer. Like Henderson's not going to continue to see this type of workload. Even being a guy that's not a big fan of Akers, I know this isn't going to continue. So if Akers' carries is only going to go up from here and they're going to be in a better position to win and be leading games, to me, that's a little bit safer on a weekly basis than what Pierce could end up being.
All right, Andrew, how about you? Pierce or Akers? Who would you rather have rest of season?
Yeah, I have them ranked back-to-back in my rest of season ranking, so it's extremely close for me. I guess I'll lean on the Akers side, but in the case, just for the reasons I kind of laid out earlier, but for the case of Pierce, I think it's a question of you might need to wait until like the bye week for the Texans to really see Pierce have that extra bump. They have an early bye week 6, so we usually see rookies kind of get more involved. Like, is Rex Burkhead going to play 70% of the snaps like every single week for the Texans? Like, I mean, probably not. Like, this is a role he's never been in. I know that they gave him a hefty amount of money, but they don't have a lot of running backs on the roster overall. So, they don't have Marlon Mack. They cut Royce Freeman. So, Dameon Pierce is still, like, in the depth chart. He's still up there. And it's almost like the Texans kind of played scared. And, the fact that they were trying to play for the tie and the fact that they got such a big lead, you'd think, oh, big lead. Like, this is prime Dameon Pierce time. Like, you were worried about Pierce because you thought they were going to fall behind in this game beforehand, but they got a lead. Right. And it's like, did the Texans take the ball out of the rookie's hands because, like, know what? We trust Rex Burkhead. He's not going to fumble the ball. He's not going to make us lose this game. And maybe that's why we didn't see as much as Pierce. So I think we're going to see the gap close between these two players, especially after the bye week. So I don't think the need to go after Pierce is so, you don't need to do it right now necessarily, because I think it's still going to be Burkhead a lot of the time before the bye week. Whereas Cam Akers, dude, I don't know. I just got a feeling that we could see something flip very, very fast for this Rams backfield, and people are going to be like, oh, no, it's Akers now, like not Henderson. So I think I'd rather go after Akers right now, especially I think his value is definitely sunk even more, I think, than Pierce, just because people were propping him up and then just to be basically just goose egg, essentially on prime time. A lot of people were disappointed.
Yeah, Akers to me is an outstanding buy low because whenever you have that perfect storm of good offense and a situation where unsteady draft capital where people were a little concerned about what they were getting, that is the perfect storm to buy low in week 1 after a big overreaction. So I'd be buying low everywhere, and I think you can. I really do. Let's go to some wide receivers. Believe it or not, heading into last night's game, the most traded wide receiver on Sleeper was DK Metcalf. So I know everyone's riding high right now and very excited in Seattle, Geno Smith especially. But DK Metcalf, Andrew, are you buying, selling, or holding DK?
I mean, what? So 7 for 7, 26% target share last night, 36 receiving yards. Like not a lot of high value targets for DK Metcalf, not really getting balls down the field, which is what that was his bread and butter with Russell Wilson. So you're happy to see him get the targets in the offense and in a PPR format. Like, it's a little bit different. You got to view Metcalf, okay, is he now more of a volume receiver versus beforehand when it was like boom or bust, like he's getting 3 touchdowns one week and then the next week he's basically just doing nothing. So I think Metcalf is still a talented wide receiver. So I don't want to dismay him in that disregard or write him off. But depending on who I'm trying to trade in terms of which player, is Metcalf the more talented of the 2 receivers? It's like if I'm a trading receiver in a bad situation versus Metcalf, if Metcalf is the better of the 2 receivers, I would lean on Metcalf. But he's still not someone I'm going out to try and target. I didn't like Metcalf a lot because of the offense situation. And, from what we saw last night, I mean, yes, the targets are there, but he had 36 receiving yards. Like, that's and no touchdown. So is that something we're really trying to get super
right.
excited about? Like, not really. So for me,
this is where the data is fascinating because like the target share is there, but the results aren't. So like the target share nerds are all excited.
Like, why is it going to change? If anything, we'll see games where Lockett, has a higher target share in the offense. Noah Fant gets involved. So I'm still just probably like a hold on Metcalf. I don't know if this is if it's a sell high situation, then yeah, I'd be thrilled to try to move off Metcalf because I just think the ceiling is going to be low with Geno Smith.
All right, Kyle, when you're looking at DK Metcalf, we just kind of laid it out there. I mean, there's some feel-good vibes right now coming off that game, but the data certainly is muddy still. And I think Andrew makes that great point too, is where's the Lockett game next week or whatever that is? Is this the moment to kind of get out of the DK Metcalf business, or are you maybe buying him on the cheap where people might be selling him for shekels on the dollar, as we like to say?
Yeah, DK Metcalf is very interesting, and I think the workload and the production we saw from this game last night is really right where his ADP was kind of telling people was going to happen this offseason. Like, we knew that some of those big plays were going to go away, that some of those big touchdowns that he's had in the past were not necessarily going to be there, where he is really kind of the number one guy, so he's going to see a good amount of targets, but how big will those targets be? So, DK Metcalf is a guy where if you play like in a PPR league, he's a guy, if you have to run him out there as your wide receiver 3 every single week, you don't feel awful about it because, maybe he gets you right around 10 fantasy points every single week, which isn't great. But for a wide receiver 3, at least, safety wise, I've got that. So if you're looking to pick him up, I mean, you got to have really good wide receivers in front of him already. If you're going to trade for him because you're like, hey, I want the DK Metcalf of old, you're going to be very disappointed because he's not going to have that this season. But if you're going to pick him up to just be a guy like, hey, I feel like I can stick him in my lineup, get 10 fantasy points a week, that's really going to make you feel a little bit better maybe about the safety of the lineup that you're running out every week, then I say go for it because depending on what, fantasy manager you have in your league, they might just look at the 7 targets and be like, whoa, we led the team in targets last week. I can't give up the wide receiver 1. Okay, well, then I don't want to trade with you because you're going to be asking too much. But, if it's that guy that's like, or gal, that's like, hey, he had 7 targets last week. Do you want DK Metcalf? That's the person I'm like, oh, yeah, yep. You're going to give him to me for a good price. Let's talk about it.
All right, another guy who's being sold quite a bit right now and a lot of panic. A lot of people are concerned. So I'll throw it out there. DK Metcalf or CeeDee Lamb? Who would you rather have rest of season, Kyle? Wow, that was a much longer pause than I anticipated. I thought this was going to be Joe, you're an idiot, CeeDee Lamb, but that was a long pause.
And that's the thing, because I feel like if I just yell CeeDee Lamb right away, that people are going to be like, whoa, wait a second, he doesn't have Dak. That doesn't. So I'm pausing to let people know that the concern of not having Dak Prescott is real, and what is going to happen with an offense that has already seen so much happen to it early this season. So for me, it is still going to be CeeDee Lamb, but I think that you're going to see some more volatile games from CeeDee Lamb where he's going to pop off and he's going to have a huge game because he is such a good playmaker all over the field that you can get him on some of those 5-yard crossing routes or something like that, and the dude's going to explode and just take off down the field. You're going to have some bigger games for him, where DK Metcalf, we're going to lose a lot of those bigger games, but he might have a little bit more of a consistent output where, CeeDee Lamb, just the offense doesn't function well. They get shut down, and, CeeDee has 2, 3, 4 fantasy points where, again, DK, maybe he gets 10 a week, and you're like, okay, that's great. It didn't really lose you a week. But if CeeDee Lamb is your number one wide receiver, which you probably drafted him as, he's going to lose you some weeks coming up.
All right, so the next 6 weeks of uncertainty with CeeDee Lamb, or the theoretical really good weeks coming after, again, theoretical, or DK Metcalf, which I guess we kind of know what we're getting with him. It's kind of like oatmeal or something without any flavor at all. What do you think, DK or CeeDee Lamb, Erickson?
No brown sugar?
Nothing. Nothing. Oh, not for you.
So,
well, if that's DK Metcalf, I'm definitely
So it's so crazy that it's already week 2, and now it's like CeeDee Lamb.
DK Metcalf for you.
It's just like you wouldn't even like picture this, and it's like, what are you talking about? Like,
this is my nightmare.
Yeah. But I'm going with DK Metcalf because I actually think that because right now the situations I view as equal in terms of they're both bad. They're both bad situations. So Lamb doesn't now have this. He's not being bolstered by this offensive juggernaut. And let's be honest, Lamb was a projection in the second round. Like, we were all projecting him to take the next step. Like, he had been a good wide receiver the first 2 years. He had not entered the elite status. DK Metcalf has done that already. Like, DK Metcalf is a better wide receiver than CeeDee Lamb in real life. I don't think that's a hot take. That's what I think. And we don't always see that translate to fantasy, but in the case of now they have equal situations with subpar quarterback play. Right. You have to remember Michael Gallup's going to be now coming back too. Okay, now you're adding him into the offense with Dak occurring from a finger injury, like a hand injury. Like, it's just, and now they're talking about him coming back in 4 weeks versus a month. It's like, you know what? I want to wipe my hands clean to CeeDee Lamb. And I wish go with DK Metcalf. Like, I feel more comfortable with what I've seen. I've already seen him get the targets in an offense led by Geno Smith, and he's the better wide receiver than CeeDee Lamb is. So, as weird as it sounds, I mean, I have Lamb in a couple of spots, and by the end of this week, I'm trying not to have him on my roster.
I don't think it sounds super weird, which is why I put those two guys together, because I think it's a real conversation. I didn't think we would get here so fast. Like you said, it's week 2. And
I would like to
Kyle,
ask Cowboy fans listening to just not go into Andrew's mentions the rest of the day. Just leave them be.
I told him not to draft Zeke either, and whatever.
What are you gonna do? All right. I'll throw another one out to you. Maybe this one is lesser. We'll see. DK Metcalf or JuJu Smith-Schuster, Erickson. Who would you rather have rest of season?
I think for here, I'm going to go with JuJu. I mean, JuJu, look, it was 1 week, but he looked like the number 1 wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes. And again, I don't want to. That's how it's going to be the rest of the year. We heard about Mahomes and how it's going to be a different guy every single week. But, MVS is still just kind of like that guy on the outside, never going to command a high target share. And until Sky Moore really takes a big step, it's probably going to be JuJu. And he's got Mahomes as his quarterback. So I just feel good about the situation there for him. JuJu looks like he's healthy. And DK, again, has just a major downgraded quarterback versus Smith-Schuster, who I wasn't sure he'd be the number 1. But after week 1, I'm more open to that being his possibility here in 2022.
Kyle, how about you? JuJu or DK rest of season?
In situations like this, and this is one of my fantasy rules to live by. If you've got 2 wide receivers that are really close and you're not 100% sure, we go with the better quarterback. I'm going JuJu because he's got Patty Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes better than Geno? Dude, don't let Seahawks Twitter come get
you. Yeah, man. All right, let's go. Another guy here who's one of the most traded wide receivers in fantasy over on the Sleeper app right now, and it's Kadarius Toney. One of our favorite toys. I wish it was Brian Daboll's favorite toy. I'd love to see him get some more action. What do you do with Kadarius Toney, Andrew? Are you buying? You're selling? You're holding? Where are you with Kadarius?
I mean, he's probably going to get dropped, and he's not playing. Like, that's the big issue here.
Well, he wasn't playing yet. I don't know if that's is he not playing, or is he just not playing yet?
Wan'Dale Robinson got hurt, and he still wasn't playing. Like, they had no one.
And then he had 1 catch, and you're like, oh my God, look, there he goes. Look at him. He's lightning. It's so exciting. He goes to try to he's going to throw a ball downfield, and he reverses field and ends up gaining 25 yards.
They were feeding David Sills and Richie James Jr. over Kadarius Toney in this game. So
I hate everything, Andrew. I hate everything.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I don't want to drop Kadarius Toney. Like, you have to keep him on your bench. But right now, you can't start him, because you don't know if he's going to play in games. So
would you buy him before people start dropping him? Would you say, hey, don't drop him to the waiver wire? Let me go see if I can get a couple shares of the cheap.
But I think that, what's going to stop someone from just dropping him anyway? Like, why would you keep him unless you were very high on him? I think that
because you might be able to offer something better than what's on the waiver wire. I mean,
But
I
who's
don't know
gonna
how
pick him
exciting
up?
Robbie Anderson is. Maybe you can,
I mean, Robbie Anderson caught a 75-yard touchdown.
I'm just saying.
I don't know if you saw that.
I did see it, but I'm just saying, like, if somebody's out there thinking, okay, these are my options on the waiver wire. Do I want Jarvis Landry? If you can offer them something better than Robbie Anderson or Jarvis Landry, I don't know if you want to do that necessarily, but you could add Toney to your roster and then maybe stop them from acquiring that player and then go add Robbie Anderson or Landry or Palmer yourself.
Yeah, I think that could work. But ultimately, I don't think this issue is going to be solved by week 2. Like we saw this with Aiyuk last year. It took basically the first half of the season for him to get on the field. And I mean, I just think it's not going to be done in week 2. Like week 2, he could play a little bit more. And then are people going to hold on to him? He's probably just going to get dropped. So we're going to talk about other names here. But I mean, monitor who has Toney in your league. And if you can stash him, I mean, I'm not going to drop him. I want to keep him on my bench because I know that the upside is there. But if you need a startable asset, like you can't use Toney.
Kyle, buy, sell, or hold Kadarius Toney.
So my issue with Toney is that the new regime in New York is clearly trying to change the culture and say, no shenanigans. We're here to play football. We're here to win games. And there was already talk over the offseason of potentially wanting to trade Toney and move on from him. And why was that? And was there issues? And then all of a sudden we get to week 1 when you've got Sterling Shepard coming off a major injury and you've got Saquon Barkley coming off major injury and you've got a guy like Kenny Galladay that looks like a stick figure trying to move around on the field right now. And like Kadarius Toney can't get targets over all these guys. That's a big red flag to me. And yes, when he gets the football in his hands, he can be very, very good. But if they're not wanting to put the football in his hands, now we're sitting here saying, okay, he's not even worth being on my roster. But if you have him and you picked him up or you drafted him or whatever, I think right now you just kind of hold put and see what happens in week 2. And I think if we go back-to-back weeks of seeing him out off the field, then yeah, at that point, we got to be done with it.
I'm going to write a letter of recommendation to Brian Daboll on Kadarius Toney's behalf. Please, will you let him have the football more? Just a little more. Let's play some trades. All right. You mentioned Aiyuk. All right. Kadarius Toney or Brandon Aiyuk, Kyle Richardson. Who would you rather have rest of the season?
I'm not pausing on that one.
Okay. No pause there. How about you,
100%.
No pause.
With their game last week in Chicago. Get rid of it. Smooth sailing from here. I'm still believing Trey Lance. I think Aiyuk's going to have a big rest of the season.
Erickson, how about you?
Yeah. Aiyuk smash.
All right, let's see if this one's closer. I doubt it, but Julio Jones, another guy who's been traded a lot over the last couple of days, or Kadarius Toney rest of season, Andrew.
Julio Jones.
Okay, so the older player, you're taking the older player with Tom Brady. That makes sense. How about you, Richardson? Same thing?
Kind of the same thing. I'm going with the quarterback. Give me Tom Brady with Julio Jones over Danny Pennies.
Danny Pennies. All right, let's go and talk about some of the favorite buy low and sell high targets the guys have at the RB and wide receiver position. Let's start with you, Kyle Richardson. Who is your favorite buy low RB this week?
I'm going out and I'm getting myself some Josh Jacobs shares. Like, I think everybody was kind of hesitant on Josh Jacobs already heading into the season. Adding Devontae Adams, an explosive offense, going to be passing the ball a lot. He didn't really do a whole lot this past week, but, he was able to average 5.7 yards per carry, which is great. But I think the thing with Las Vegas is they're going to have to get more balanced. Like, I don't think Las Vegas and Derek Carr, and I like Derek Carr, I don't think they're a team that are going to consistently win shootouts and say, hey, if I'm going head to head with you and we're going to have to throw it 40, 50 times a game, I don't think they're going to win very many games doing that. So I think they got to get a lot more balanced moving forward, and I think they will. And that's going to give Jacobs a little bit more of an opportunity to kind of get pushed in the right direction. Now, he's not a guy, again, that I believe is going to go out and just win you weeks with huge games. But I think moving forward, if they do get more balanced, he's a guy that's giving you enough fantasy points that if you're starting him in your flex spot, or if you have some injuries and have to bump him up to RB2, that you'll put him in and you'll be like, okay, I don't feel gross about it.
All right, Andrew, who's your buy low RB this week?
Yeah, I mentioned him a little bit earlier, but it's Rhamondre Stevenson for me. 25% snap share in week 1. People are going to look at that like, oh, he's buried on the depth chart. But it's like, yeah, but the numbers can only go up. Like, he has a room to grow in this offense. I don't expect Ty Montgomery to have such a big role. And even when Stevenson was running routes, he only ran 5 routes in week 1. He got 2 targets. and he looked explosive with the ball in his hands. And even though he had such a small snap share, he had one fewer touch than Dameon Harris. So if he's already seeing nearly double-digit touches on a 25% snap share, if that goes to 30%, 40%, 50%, as the Patriots realize, wow, he's our best player on offense, like, let's get him the ball because we can't do anything. I think Stevenson is such an easy buy low because you're betting on the talent. And I just think that he's the best playmaker on the Patriots.
Okay, let's move to the wide receiver position. You tell me, who is your favorite buy low wide receiver, Andrew?
It's Mike Williams, baby. Los Angeles Chargers, Mike Williams. Guys, of course there were going to be a few bumps in the road with Mike Williams. We all
big
knew.
bump. This was more of I would say a giant hill.
Right, but if you look at the way the Chargers just targets were distributed, I mean, Austin Eckler was barely involved as a receiver. They were using like Josh Kelly, DeAndre Carter, like really weird after Keenan Allen left in the first half. Like there were like 9 players that had like 4 targets. So it was very spread out across the board, and I just don't think that's going to be the case long term. Like Mike Williams has always been a boom or bust type of guy. I think that he's going to bounce back here on Thursday night. There's going to be probably no
Thursday too.
Probably no Keenan Allen. So, people are sleeping on Mike Williams. Like, oh, here we go again. Like I drafted this wicked inconsistent receiver, and this is when you want to buy the dip. Like, yeah, he's going to have bad games, and it just comes at very weird, opportune times. You think with Allen out, he would have a big game. Not the case. So he still had a really high route rate in terms of 91% dropbacks for Justin Herbert. Mike Williams is running a route. So he's still the number 1 wide receiver by usage in the Chargers offense. And yeah, I mean, the last time he played the Chiefs, over 100 receiving yards in week 17 of last year. So I like Mike Williams.
All right. Who do you like as a buy low, Kyle, this week at wide receiver?
So I have a 1-and-1 for you because I got a bonus pick because I put these in last night before the game was over. But number 1 was DJ Chark for me, and he's a guy that you might not even have to buy. You can probably still get off your waivers unless you're in deeper leagues. But this is a guy that was just a deep sleeper for me all offseason long. I kind of bought into this Detroit offense, knowing that the defense probably still wasn't going to be at a level that they could get off the field quickly, was going to have some holes where they were going to extend drives. And we saw that with the Eagles going up against them in week 1. But the biggest thing with the Lions is we saw them establish the run. And that is something that Campbell has said repeatedly that he wants to do. Well, they did it in week 1. And we're going to see that continue to happen when you're so good at establishing the run and you got a running back like DeAndre Swift. And then you add in a really good offensive line. And then you also add in the fact that you've got some really good weapons that are going to win in the middle of the field with TJ Hawkinson and, of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to see DJ Chark on the outside with some really nice one-on-ones. He's not going to have consistent games, but he's going to have some big games as a wide receiver 3 that you can toss in there. And he's going to win you some weeks and some better matchups. So for me, I'm 100% still trying to go get DJ Chark because he's still being overshadowed by DeAndre Swift. He's being overshadowed by Amon-Ra St. Brown. People are still talking about, TJ Hawkinson's going to get going. And then people are just scared of Jared Goff being an NFL quarterback. So they're going to be worried about him with that. But, he was trying to go to him last week, and I like him moving forward. But my +1 here, because I put these in before the game was over last night, is Courtland Sutton now. Jerry Jeudy with the huge week last week. I still think Courtland Sutton is going to have a really big impact in that offense. We're going to see him with some big plays coming up. People might be a little bit scared off now. Javonte Williams with so many targets. Jeudy kind of being that number 1 last night that they might be like, maybe Judy's the guy. Sutton's still going to be there. So if the Sutton owner is even a little bit panicked, try to make your move now.
By the way, Andrew, I give you a lot of credit for coming to work today after last night too, with all the Sutton stuff. Let's go to the guys who want to sell high, the ones we want to get out of. Kyle, let's start with you. Who's the RB you think you could sell high right now?
Well, I mentioned it earlier with James Robinson. So, and again, I am a huge James Robinson truther. Absolutely love him. But just, a guy coming off an injury like that, the potential to break down this season, I think is just going to be a lot higher than you see with other guys. And people see that performance from him last week, and we've kind of written Travis Etienne off already a little bit, I feel like, is a fantasy community. He still averaged 11.8 yards per carry, talking about Etienne. He had 9 yards per reception, and he dropped that touchdown on the goal line, which is big. I mean, that stinks. But if he would have caught that, he would have been right around 15 fantasy points in half PPR leagues, I believe. So, I mean, that was a pretty significant drop. But, his first NFL game, I think people forget, he missed all last year with an injury. Now he's back in his first NFL game. I think you're going to see this dynamic kind of close in a little bit as ETN starts to feel a little bit better. And now you've got guys that we're looking at more of like a 50-50, snap percentage and things like that. And, there's another really good running back that dropped a for sure touchdown in his first NFL game by the name of DeAndre Swift. He's turned out just fine as well. So I'm not off Travis Etienne yet. That's why I'm selling high on James Robinson, because I think what you saw in week 1 just isn't what you're going to get the rest of the year every week.
Erickson, who's your sell high RB for week 2?
For me, it's Cordell Patterson, running back for the Atlanta Falcons, and it's because it's peak value. Like, he had 25 touches.
He also turns 47, I think, tomorrow.
He had 25 touches in week 1 because Dameon Williams got hurt very early on. Tyler Algier was a healthy scratch. And I just don't think it's ever going to necessarily get better. I mean, he rushed for 120 yards on 22 carries against the Saints defense that we thought was elite. It's not, apparently, against the run. So 65% snap share. Again, this isn't a case of, okay, just sell Patterson for whoever you can get back because, he's coming off a massive game. But I cannot envision a scenario where he's seeing the ball 25 touches per game for the rest of the season. That was this career high. So I'm trying to sell at peak value, and that's kind of the move here with Patterson. I thought just kind of point out something from the usage report that released today. We're looking at Patterson's route participation. He actually split it pretty closely with Avery Williams, who is a former defensive back turned running back. Now, Avery Williams had to take on a bigger role because Dameon Williams got hurt, and Dameon Williams is kind of known as a pass-catching running back. So I just think the numbers are really inflated because Dameon Williams got hurt, and they were talking about Dameon Williams having a legitimate role in this offense. But in week 1, everything kind of came together for Patterson because Dameon Williams got hurt, so they had really no other choice but to give the ball to Patterson in the matchup that ended up working in their favor. So week 2 against the Rams defense, are we going to see 120 rushing yards from Patterson? Probably not. So I think you got the value from Patterson drafting him so late, and if you could trade him for a more stable asset like a Nick Chubb who played less snaps than a Kareem Hunt. Like, I think you can just get a steady body more at running back or even receiver for Patterson as opposed to trying to ride the roller coaster that I think could get a little bit bumpy down the stretch.
Yeah, the age too. I mean, I know we all said it can't sustain with Cordell Patterson last year. We said that for about 6 weeks.
But it did.
We
but eventually it did fall off.
It did, but eventually it did fall off. And I think that's the thing, that it might last a couple. Like, you might have seller's remorse, if it were, maybe for September and October, but then I think come November, December, you'd be like, yeah, I'm glad I did that when I did it. I think it's not to say he's not a user, because the thing is, like, he's not going to just score 0 points. Like, he has value. Like, you can't just trade. Like, but can you trade him for more than his value?
Yes,
that becomes the question. All right, who is the guy right now that you want to get out from under and sell high at wide receiver right now, Andrew?
So it's funny. So Kyle Richardson beat me to the show sheet here, and he basically, I'm going to spoil. He put no one as his sell high wide receiver, and
you did spoil his stuff.
I agree with Kyle. I don't know his reasoning, but at least my reasoning was all the receivers we thought were going to be good. Like, we're all good. Like, for the most part, a lot of, like, I'm not selling Devontae Adams, I'm not selling Stephon Diggs, I'm not selling Jefferson, Chase, like all these stud guys, because we all expected them to be like mega producers, Michael Pittman, like all of these breakout guys, like. They produced, and then the guys that didn't, you can't sell those guys. So for me, I'm just going back to CeeDee Lamb, where he has the draft capital still attached to him, being basically a fringe first-round, second-round pick, and obviously his value is suppressed because of the Dak injury. But people are going to spin the narrative that, oh, no, he'll be fine with Cooper Rush. Like, people do this all the time with some of these receivers. They try to spin it like, oh, he'll get the targets. Yeah, he got the targets on Sunday Night Football. He caught 2 passes on 11 targets. He only had a 27% target share, which isn't even like 30%. Like, if you're going to be making up for inefficient targets, you need to be over that 30% threshold, which CeeDee Lamb has really never shown that he can do. What if Michael Gallup comes back and is healthy? What if they add another wide receiver? Like, Jalen Tolbert is he's a ghost. Like, where's he? Like, could they add another veteran to this receiver room, make a trade? I just think that with Lamb, this is the time where there's a lot of receivers that you could probably just get from straight up. And Richardson mentioned Courtland Sutton. I mean, if I can just flip Lamb for Courtland Sutton, people are low on Sutton, that's what I'm going to be doing.
Fair enough. Now, what was your reasoning, Kyle, behind the no one to sell high right now?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew pretty much hit the nail on the head there. I mean, Jefferson, Kupp, Adams, Chase, Pittman, Diggs, and Brown are your top 7 wide receivers this week, and we all expected them to be right there. But then outside of that, the guys who are right behind him, like Devin Duvernay. Well, no one's buying
No
Devin
one cares,
Duvernay
right?
because
Yeah.
he's probably on waivers anyway. Robbie Anderson's probably on waivers anyway. Jahan Dotson's probably on waivers anyway. So, there's a lot of guys right there. Gabriel Davis, who was the wide receiver 12 this week. I'm not selling Gabriel Davis in that offense. Like, I'm keeping him. So the only one that I really looked at, and I kind of shied away from it because I feel like Saints fans hate me right now, is Michael Thomas. Because I haven't been the biggest Michael Thomas supporter this offseason. And he caught 2 touchdowns, but at times he didn't look like his former explosive self out of his routes. He just didn't quite look like the former Michael Thomas. So I'm still kind of apprehensive about how high does he go? Is he going to be a little bit more dependent on touchdowns the rest of the season? Or as the season goes on, does he get a little bit better coming off of, that, slight hamstring scare that we had here in training camp? But if you drafted Michael Thomas, you're probably a Michael Thomas truther, and you're not selling Michael Thomas because you drafted him specifically for this reason. Now, if you are going to trade him because you probably drafted him as your wide receiver or 4 or 5, depending on the league you're in, if you have him that far down on your bench and you need running back help and you have issues there, maybe you could flip him right now and get yourself a decent running back to put in as an RB2 or something. That's kind of where if you're going to sell high on somebody, do it for a reason like that. Don't sell Michael Thomas because you're scared that he's not going to do this the rest of the season. Sell him because you can get a really, really good piece to add onto your team. And Thomas wasn't going to be a guy that you were going to have to rely on weekly anyway.
All right, fair enough. Let's close things out here with a little rapid fire game called Pick 6. I'm going to pull some questions straight from our Discord channel over at fantasypros.com/chat, which is free to join. And again, see all the perks, right? You might have your questions answered not only by us, but also on the podcast and make you famous. So if you haven't already, go join our Discord for free at fantasypros.com/chat. And remember, when you upgrade at fantasypros.com/offers, you get the 6 free months of Fantasy Pros. You also get the premium tools and all the premium Discord stuff too, like stages and AMAs, which are super fun. So let's go. Gentlemen, are you ready for a little rapid fire Q&A? Well, it doesn't matter. Let's just go. All right, let's go. This is from JMG24. Who do you prefer, Debo for Aiyuk or MG3? Oh, sorry, Debo for Aiyuk and MG3 or Lamb for Chase Edmonds? Which deal do you prefer, Andrew, of those two?
I prefer the Debo deal, and I want the Debo side.
The Debo deal, getting the Debo side. Same for you?
Yep.
Okay, let's go to the next one here. Nobody, spelled with a K, very clever. Anybody trading for CeeDee Lamb right now in Dynasty? It feels like it's a buy low opportunity for rebuilding a team. Kyle, is this maybe not the redraft CeeDee Lamb we hope for, but is this a Dynasty opportunity?
Yeah, when you get a young, explosive wide receiver like CeeDee Lamb and you get a guy that's panicked because maybe he doesn't help him win as much in 2022 as you would like, you absolutely pull the trigger on bringing him in.
Andrew, same for you. Is this a buy low opportunity or perhaps a trap?
No, I agree. Good buy low opportunity.
Okay, so buying low in Dynasty on CeeDee Lamb. Let's go to Sheebzus. Sheebzus wants to know, should I trade Mike Williams for Amon-Ra St. Brown? Andrew?
Yeah, I would do it. I mean, St. Brown is a real deal, man. He just picked up where he left off last year, and he's got the value right now. So I would take St. Brown.
So you would take Amon-Ra over Mike Williams already. That's interesting.
I mean, Mike Williams started out last year on fire, and Amon-Ra St. Brown has basically been on fire since the end of last year. Okay. So he's got the value now. So I'd rather just go with him.
I think they're close, but it's nice that Amon-Ra St. Brown getting some love. How about you, Kyle? What
As
side of this deal you want to be on?
That hurts. I'm going to take Mike Williams, though.
Oh, wow.
Love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's an excellent wide receiver, and I think he does exactly what he's supposed to do in Detroit. But these two are very, very close for me, so it's kind of the same thing I talked about earlier. I want to go with the quarterback. I trust Justin Herbert to get it going a little bit more than I trust Jared Goff to keep it going.
All right, let's go to this next one. I'm going to try my best. Chunzo Van Ostrich wants to know, trade Deontay Johnson for Darnell Mooney. Richardson, which side of this deal you want to be on?
Yeah, give me Mooney.
Give you Mooney. Interesting. How about you? Same thing, Andrew?
I'll just keep Deontay Johnson. I mean,
all right, I got to break the tie.
View them very similarly, so I'll just take the guy that's more proven.
I hate to do this. I hate agreeing with Andrew, but I'm going to have to. DJ for me as well, so I'll break the tie. That guy, Cam, wants to know, trade away Lamb. I told you, everyone's trading CeeDee Lamb. Trade away Lamb and Rhamondre for Chubb and Mooney. Erickson, which side of this deal you want to be on, the Lamb-Rhamondre side or the Chubb-Mooney side in PPR?
I'll take the Chubb and Mooney side.
Chubb and Mooney. How about you, Richardson? What do you think?
Oh yeah, give me some Chubb every single day. I'll
Chubb
take that
and Mooney.
100%.
James wants to know, worth trading off A.J. Dillon for Pitts? I have Eckler, Barkley, Dobbins, so I'm pretty comfortable at RB, or so everyone thinks, and I'm stuck streaming tight end. So do you think you can even pull that trade off, Richardson? I mean, that seems like a lot for Pitts, right? I know you had a down game, but still.
Yeah, no, I'm keeping AJ Dillon. I would rather try to stream tight ends the rest of the season than potentially. I mean, Dobbins isn't even still healthy yet at this point. So keep AJ Dillon as your RB3 right now. And if something happens to these guys and you start lacking RB depth, it's going to be a lot easier to stream tight ends than it's going to be to find a running back to step in later on.
All right. How about you, Andrew? I know you're a big fan of Pitts. Are you going to do this deal?
I'm going with Pitts. Pitts got the air yards, baby. Buy low.
All the air yards. All right, there you go. Like I said, if you want to get on the Discord conversation, join at fantasypros.com/chat today. I told you how to upgrade already. And remember, you also get the trade analyzer, the trade finder, all the amazing tools at my playbook. So go to fantasypros.com/offers. Get that 6 free months right now. Make a quick deposit offer. Go put some money in some DFS or make a couple wagers. The next thing you know, you get all of our tools. You get all the access to my playbook at fantasypros.com/myplaybook, where the trade analyzer can help you figure out which moves you should make, which ones you shouldn't. And of course, the trade finder, which will show you moves maybe you didn't even think about. Kyle Richardson, we're so happy you joined us today on the program. Again, you could follow him over on the Twitter machine at krich1532 and check out Fantasy Headliners and all their great work. And congratulations, Kyle, on the full-time stuff, baby. It's a beautiful world. I'm very happy for you. I know Andrew is as well. We want to appreciate you stopping by and talking football with us. Of course, check out all of Andrew Erickson's great work at fantasypros.com. And I got no work. I got nothing to show anybody. So that'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Kyle and Andrew, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.